We'll start with a pledge of allegiance. Please join me in salute the flag of our nation. Ready? Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Please call the roll.
Board Member Connolly?
Here.
Board Member Durkee?
Here.
Board Member Ritter? Here. Board Member Kimmelshue?
Here.
Board Member Teeter? Board Member Knuckles? Board Member Teeter? Yeah. Are you here?
Yeah, I said best for last.
Okay. Board Member Reynolds? Board Alternate, Winslow?
I'm here. I didn't know she was gonna be gone. I was gonna come in public comment something, but I'll sit in on the meeting then.
Too late.
Board Member Calderon?
Here.
Board Member Pittman?
Here.
Board Member Trial?
Here. Yes, sir.
Okay. Would any board member like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Anybody from the public? Is there any electronic public comment today? So I don't ask that again. All right, I'll entertain a motion on consent agenda, please.
Motion to approve consent.
Motion a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, next up is the item for action, acceptance of BCAG Fiscal Audit and Transportation Development Act audit for the cities, town, and county for the year ending 30th.
Yeah. Good morning, Board. I'm going to stand up here just because it's kind of easier to have it laid out up here. Today we're presenting the financial statements, BCAG financial statements for the year ending June 30th, 2023. The audited financial statements are presented to the Federal Clearinghouse, the State Controller's Office, Caltrans, and other funding agencies. BCAG also ensures that the allocated TDA funds are audited, and so we are also presenting the audits of your jurisdiction's TDA funds. I'm going to review the highlights of the financial statements, and Ingrid Scheiplein from Richardson and Associates will discuss the audit. So I think you have copies of the audit in front of you. I'm going to turn to page 4. Page 4 starts the management's discussion and analysis. It's about 10 pages of a discussion of what's going on for the year. There's some financial highlights listed, and I'll get to those as I go through. There's also an overview of the financial statements, the kind of financial statements we have. We have 2 kinds, government-wide and government funds. So you hear this in some of your other board meetings, but government-wide, I'm going to start by looking at those on page 7. This is a comparative view, so it looks at the last 2 years. And the government-wide includes all of our assets, all of our liabilities, and then comes down to the net assets. So there at the bottom on the far right, you have you see that we've increased to 41 million in total net assets. This is made up of the assets that we have, 54 million of assets, mostly cash. We have a long-term, we have a receivable that's related to the BRTC, that new market tax credit deal that we did to be able to acquire the building. We have a large note receivable. That increased 5 million this year, we'll see, because of closing round 1. That allowed, that increased that note receivable. When the second round of BRTC closes, we will lose these notes and we will acquire the facilities themselves, and then you'll see our net assets increase for the bringing on of all the buildings at that time. We have almost 10 million in capital assets. That's mainly the buses. It's not the facility, as I said, because right now the nonprofit is holding the building. In the liability section, we did have a pretty large increase this year. Those are mainly related to the pension liabilities and the other post-employment health benefit liabilities. And there's large sections of notes that discuss that in the financial statements. but, you'll probably see that, across all government agencies, because part of that increase is when the market falls, the net assets that you hold that offset the liability drop and your liability goes up. So that's one of the things that happened with the pension. But something of note for the health benefit is in December of 2021, you approved an increase in the health benefit for BCAG, and this is just now hitting the financial statements this year. So that liability increased $600,000, but we had anticipated $575,000, so we hit the mark pretty close. And as we explained at that time, we continue to fund that benefit in advance of retirements. So we expect to be able to bring that down over time. So that's kind of the story that's happened there and in the liabilities. So if you turn to page 8, you'll see you can see the activities. And the main thing to see in here is for 2023, the increase in that net position is basically related to the $5 million increase in that note receivable that we had. Okay, let's look at page 11. This is always my favorite one with color. This does a breakdown of the revenues for transit, and I always like to show everybody where the funding comes from for transit, because passenger fares is covering about 10%. Last year it was 9.7. Historically, before the pandemic, we used to get about 16% from fares. And then now it's settled down to where the federal and the TDA are about even. During the pandemic, when we had all the pandemic funds, we had a lot more federal assistance during that time. But now we are back to kind of more of a historical even breakdown of the federal and the TDA funding for transit. Okay, let's turn now to page 16. On page 16 and 17, you have the government fund financial statements. This is the way that we present it in a budget form and the way we talk about it and use our funds. So this is the historical way of financial statements used to be presented, and we still are required to present them this way. So the Planning and Administration Fund, that's the OWP. When we talk about the OWP budget and you approve it, that's the fund where all of those activities are being held. State Highway is the regional, well, I always forget this acronym, Regional Surface Transportation Plan. And then you have the LTF, the STA, and the State of Good Repair. That comprises the various funds that make up the BCAG government funds. If you turn to page 17, which is, that was the balance sheet, this is more of an income statement view. You'll see that we've got about $4 million in expenditures. The salaries and benefits come in at about 1.9, and that is consistent with what we budgeted. Those things are consistent pretty year over year. The net change in that fund was about $100,000, and that's mostly related to the capital that we received from transit when we purchased some assets and they transferred it over to our side. The State Highway Fund, which again is that Regional Surface Transportation Program, all of those funds, 100% of those funds get dispersed to your various jurisdictions, and they use them for various road projects. We allocated 3.3 in this year. Last year it was 2.7, but it's been historically around the $3 million mark. The LTF revenue decreased slightly over prior year. This is, local transportation funds are the 0.25% of the sales tax in our county that come back to us for road and transit projects. And with the economy being a little bit down, the LTF dollars came back a little bit lower. We were still able to allocate and disperse to the jurisdictions about $11 million, partly because even when the economy turns down, we have such a large fund balance that we can maintain those level allocations so that your budgets can remain steady versus going up and down with the market. So that's one of the reasons why you do see larger fund balances in both of those. State transit assistance is only for transit, and it increased significantly over the year. I think a couple of years back, the state was flush. They threw a lot more into it, and I think we'll probably see it drop back down as the state continues to have some budget issues. The State of Good Repair is a relatively new funding program that it is designed for us to accumulate funds to be able to keep the facilities and the buses in good repair. And so that money that we've got down at the bottom, you can see there's about 1.6 in ending fund balance. And we've got that utilized, set aside for bus purchases. In the future, we're going to start setting some of that money aside for the facility here because we are 5, 6, 7 years in, and we're gonna start needing to replace certain things. So we can set some of that money aside for those larger replacements. Yeah.
You said initially that our fleet fell under our assets. How do we reflect it in here if it's depreciating asset in the value at the time of acquisition and then the following year?
It goes down, 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 down. Yep, that's how the, so you'll see the assets go down, 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 and then we get a new asset, so it spikes. And then down, 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 down. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's turn to page 20, and you'll see the other major hat that we wear, which is transit. And we've discussed the transit when we did the fourth quarter transit report, but this is a view collectively. Normally when we report it in the quarterly reports, we report on the various systems that we have, but this is the collective view of it. So I just wanted to point out that we had a 12% increase in the operating revenue over the prior year. The fare revenues are coming back after the pandemic. And the total operating expense of $12 million is about a 5% increase over the prior year. That is largely driven by the midway in there called purchase transportation, $7.9 million. That's the contract we have with TransDev, and those are contracted rate increases. So the majority of what's happening in the transit budget is driven by the contracts that we have with TransDev. If you could scroll to 45, which is now towards the very end, there's a whole bunch of notes in the middle, explains all kinds of different things, including those pensions, lots of notes on the pensions. But on page 45, this is where we put in the financial statements, that breakdown of the transit like you're used to seeing in the quarterly reports. And it shows the fare box recovery ratio. And I just wanted to inform you that there were no material differences in what's reported in the audit and what we reported last September at that at the board meeting where we discussed the fourth quarter of the transit. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions by the public? I entertain a motion.
Well, then Ingrid is going to discuss the audit
Oh, we gotta do that.
quickly. Yep, but I just had questions, if there were questions on the statement.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Skipped right over the audit.
So I'm going to walk through the one-page outline that just summarizes in a nutshell the results of the audit. We issued 5 reports as a result of the audit. I'm going to touch on the highlights of those. First is the independent auditor's report. So Julie prepares the financial statement. So our goal is to audit the information that is contained in there and determine whether it's complete. This opinion is considered to be an unmodified opinion on everything except for the governmental activities. And the reason for that is because of a new lease standard that was effective last year that BCAG has opted not to implement related to this whole leasing transaction with the new market tax credit. And the reason for that is because they're going to basically accept ownership, and those leases will terminate in 2026. So that's not considered, it's really just a judgmental issue and not considered significant. I'm going to skip over the significant activities because Julie highlighted all of the items that I had here to point out. The next report is the report on internal control and compliance. So one of the objectives of our audit is to determine that you're in compliance with the Transportation Development Act as well as the federal requirements for the federal grant funding that you received. This year there was about 6.8 million of federal funds that were received and expended during the year. This report is also considered a clean report. And so we look at internal controls as well as compliance with laws and regulations. And we determined that there were no weaknesses in internal controls and that BCAG complied with all of the state and federal requirements. Next is the required communications letter, and this contains certain items that are required to communicate to you. And this addresses areas where we had adjustments or changes to the numbers presented, and I'm pleased to report we had no adjustments as a result of the audit, and I think that really attests to the excellent job that Julie does in maintaining the accounting records in accordance with accounting principles, so she does a great job of that. The letter also identifies there were two areas where we didn't require adjustments, and one of the areas is adjusting the investment in the county pool at fair value. And again, this is just a judgmental item. It doesn't affect the cash that you have at the county pool, but the requirement is that it be adjusted to fair value. So that is an adjustment that we passed on because it's immaterial. Also, there's a small amount of accrued payroll at the end of the year that we don't require adjustments for, but we're still required to bring those to your attention. And those were intentional. They were not items that were overlooked. The letter also indicates if we had any difficulties in performing the audit, we would need to bring those to your attention, but the audit process went smoothly. Julie does an excellent job of preparing for the audit and having all of the items available to us at the scheduled start date of the audit. This letter also indicates if there were any unusual accounting practices followed by BCAG, we would need to bring those to your attention, but there were no such items. As Julie mentioned, we also audit your jurisdictions that you represent to ensure that they're spending the TDA funds appropriately. And so the reports, I believe you have your relative jurisdiction reports available. The Gridley reports were not available. They're behind in their accounting, so we were not able to complete those audits for fiscal year 22 and 23. So those, we did get information earlier in the week, and we just still need to go through those before we can complete those audits. There's also a separate management letter that's issued, and the items in here are not, we had no recommendations for improvement relative to BCAG itself, again, determining that you have all the proper internal controls in place. So the items that we mentioned in the letter are related to the claimant. Really just had one new finding this year, the street reports that are due December 1st. Oroville was a little bit late in filing that report. The comments that we have relative to Gridley in here are carryover from the 21 audit because we have not been able to complete those audits to determine whether those items have been resolved. So overall, good, clean audit, and I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
Questions or comments? Public comment?
Just Too good. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve? Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Passes unanimous. Number 9, approval of vendor contracts for Butte Regional Transit. Sarah. Can't hardly hear you. Like your mic's not on, so.
Can you hear me?
Sorry about that.
There you go.
We recently completed 2 requests for proposals processes for a couple of viewing projects, including a unified ride scheduling platform and a mobile ticketing system. We received Federal Transit Administration funds to upgrade our on-demand scheduling platform. It's currently being used for paratransit. The upgrade system is needed as the current program called PASS is being discontinued. Additionally, this upgrade platform will accommodate new services such as microtransit and non-emergency medical transportation. We received 7 responses to this RFP, and after careful consideration, we recommend a contract be negotiated with TripSpark Technologies. We have a long-standing relationship with TripSpark on several products, including the current paratransit scheduling system, our mapping software of fixed route and dispatch, and automated vehicle location. On our mobile ticketing process, we receive FTA funds to enhance and upgrade our mobile ticketing software. Due to ongoing maintenance and expense, we've determined that the removal of the existing fare boxes from the bus and the establishment of a new technology that better supports cashless customers and those without a smartphone will ease the difficulty of carrying cash on the bus. For riders who prefer using cash, we'll likely establish partnerships with local convenience stores where cash can still be exchanged for use of bus tickets. Additionally, tickets may still be purchased in cash at our offices at Butte County Public Works and Paradise Town Hall. We received 10 responses to this RFP. We're still completing interviews and necessary follow-up questions with our top scoring vendors. And this item is requesting that the board approve the executive director to negotiate and execute any final terms on these agreements. Take any questions?
How much of the business is done by cash now? Do you have a percentage?
Right, do we have an approximate?
Approximately of the $1.1 million that were collected in fares last year, I'd say about half of that is done over cash.
Oh,
versus
really?
Credit cards. Probably a little bit more than half.
Of that half number, that doesn't necessarily mean it's done on the bus.
Yeah.
That means that it could be cash person, on the bus itself, but that half number isn't necessarily all on the bus. It'll be a transition to have cash off the bus, but our current fare boxes have high maintenance expense. And it's been a goal of ours for some time to eliminate that burden of cash.
What's the incentive for a store to sell tickets? Give them a percentage or?
The store could partner with a vendor called Incom. I'm not sure if there's an incentive for the store itself, but the Incom vendor would take a percentage of the ticket sale.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so right now, I'm sorry, I don't ride the bus, so I should know this, but, there's a fair amount of cash on each bus. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. In the locked position, so.
My concern is there, how many places are we gonna have to sell these? Because it doesn't sound like a lot. Whether it be in the city of Chico, whether we could do it at 411 Main Street, partner with them. I mean, if this is the route that we're going, I'm a bad person to talk to this about because I carry cash everywhere. And I still believe in carrying cash. So,
All the
and
time.
if it was like 5%, I think it would be different, but I'm talking 50%.
Initial.
is that 50% cash, as we call it, is that when, if they've purchased a pass with cash, does that count as cash as well?
Yeah, so
All right,
either a ticket or a pass
Okay,
in
so if they come
cash.
here and purchase a pass with cash,
Right.
that's considered a cash transaction for the bus.
Yes, which we would still offer, that someone could purchase a ticket in cash at our offices or at, public health or in the town of Paradise. This would be eliminating cash on the bus. So if someone wanted to ride and they wanted to purchase a ticket or a pass when they board the bus, that would be the elimination of their box.
Just don't want to have a, no offense, Addison, a City of Chico parking meter fiasco with this. I'm taking. Yeah. I just want to, I want to make it easier, not harder for people to use the bus. And I think if we get rid of cash completely, we're making it harder. And that's my opinion.
That's a viable comment. I mean, we're really concerned about that too. I think what we're really trying to do is we're trying to bring in, we'll call it a cashless system, a way of using the bus for people who prefer to do that. Still make sure that we don't leave those people behind. Because you're right, it is the last thing we want to do is we want to come up with something like this great thing and we're just going to create another problem. So part of it is in looking at this mobile vendor and talking with them like, okay, what can we really do? What does make sense to move towards this type of an option to take the cash boxes off? It's really aimed at getting the cash boxes off the bus. It's difficult. They're really expensive and they break, and so if we can find a way to eliminate cash box function on the bus, and still be able to provide with the opportunity to use cash, and it very well may be that we expand so that you can use it.
It's kind of like we've all seen through government, if we're going to a paperless system, right? Paperless system. Right, so it's the same. So, what you said.
No, I think there's still elderly people that would rather use cash.
I'm not elderly.
I'm not 40, yeah, I'm in my 40s, I'm not elderly.
So do I. Okay, I misspoke. My colleague corrected me. But what I'm saying is there's still a lot of people that won't use their phone to buy, or their PC or whatever to buy tickets. That's the non-cash way of doing it, right? Completely online.
And honestly, if we can't come up with a solution that really does make sense and keep everyone included, we'll do it.
Hopefully ease some tension. Some of the vendors that we're talking with, and about 80% of the 8 out of the 10 proposals recommended using a service called INCOM. INCOM operates currently at 21 locations in Butte County, so it would actually greatly increase your ability to use cash to buy a pass, because you could go to any one of those places, show them a barcode, and hand them cash. They would scan that barcode and add those funds directly to your account. No need for a credit card. If we would still have those 4 or 5 locations in the county that we currently operate, also accepting cash for paper passes for those who don't have a smartphone. So the options would actually increase, not decrease.
I would like to see a breakdown, and I don't know if this is possible, of, okay, who uses, like what you just described, percentage, versus the actual percentage of, call it cash, but people that actually get on the bus and put cash or coins into the machine. That's what I would like to know is, what's that number? Is that number 2%, or is that number 30%? If actually, the old school, dropping the coin and,
We could dive into that and bring that back to the next
I think
meeting.
that would be important to know, how many people are actually using the currency when they get on the bus as opposed to using the currency at the stores to purchase their passes, because I think that's an important number to know.
And, and the elderly really is a good example of a population of people that, just are uncomfortable switching to these kinds of technologies. And, if we're gonna do something like this, we have to have a confidence level that we're able to communicate to them in a way that we see that they have an understanding of what the option is. So it's a lot of commitment on our part to make sure that we educate and communicate well to.
And there's a lot of options out there with that as far as through the libraries, they have, you know, elderly, there's all sorts of options for that. But
You said there was like 9 or 10 vendors. What does the transition look like, or what do the transition plans look like in terms of how long does it take to go from where we are to implementation, you know, fully implementing a system? You know, I'm just picturing people getting on the bus to go to an appointment or work and being stranded at the door.
We're anticipating that, we did pursue this type of a mobile ticketing system, that it would be available sometime next year for customers. But that being said, if there is a difficulty of reaching people to let them know about not being able to accept cash on the bus, we would keep the fare boxes on for a longer period of time for that transition to be easier.
Is there any, from the places that have done this, is there any kind of specified transition time, if you do this for 3 months and then you do this, and, or is it just really?
I think it just depends on each jurisdiction and their challenges and percentage of customers that are using cash on the bus. But we can certainly ask that question of the vendors that we've spoken with, because we haven't selected anyone just yet.
And this is not something we want to surprise people with.
No.
It's going to be a slow process. And, you know, one of the solutions that some of these agencies provide is they leave a donation box. And inherently what happens is, we do it now, everyone does, you end up providing free rides for those situations where people are on a bus, they need a ride, and they don't have the fare on the bus. So that can be helpful too, because people who have cash, you know, they get on and, well, I have the cash, but there's no way to actually do it. I'll just put it in the last box. So you kind of provide, this, you know, option for people who are going to be able to actually take the money and do a ticket, that there's a way for them to deposit funds and still use the funds.
I'd like to hear, and no disrespect, I'd like to hear from Councilmember Winslow, just because I know you use transportation a lot more than the rest of us, and what's your input on this?
Yeah, thanks. I have taken a lot of buses. You're talking about the elderly, and I'm thinking of people who feel like 13 years old. You're taking the bus as a one-off thing. You hobble together some quarters, and then you get on and they tell you, we can't take your quarters. I don't know, I didn't have a wallet till I was like in age years. I think that's a lot of the population that uses it, and it's not a regular thing, so they're not planning. They have not gone to the website. They've not gone to one of the vendors, and they're just want to get their money. You don't want them to get kicked off the bus for that, because it will be the last one-off time they try to take the bus. We're trying to encourage people to make a habit out of this. So I've taken a lot of different buses in places where, if you take the bus here, all the time, somebody comes on, either the card doesn't work, they don't have the right cash or something, or they don't have it at all, and there's kind of this moment of like, oh, what do I do? Do I get off the bus? And somebody else steps up and they pay it for them. That's like a regular experience in how people actually pay it, and it kind of delays everything. In other systems, like Kings County in Seattle, from my experience, they treat it as essentially like a donation system. If you don't have the money, they're like, okay, just get on the bus, don't worry about it. I've been putting in coins and had them tell me, you're good, dude. Like, they're like, you don't look like you have the money, so just I'm like working on a 10 agency on an industrial area at night, like, you don't pay, don't worry. And in Portland, they have a cashless system, so you step on the bus, and then I didn't know this, I just got off like Amtrak or something. And they're like, we can't take your cash. You have to download this app in order to do it. And I'm like, that is annoying. No. And so he's like, sit right there, like, sit in the seat just behind the driver, and he's like, download the app and then do it. And I'm on this bus, like, struggling to do it. I'm like, wait, it's like, he's gonna let me just get off not doing it because the phone's not downloading it. And he basically made sure that I did, or at least I would have had to tell him, like, I really can't do this, I'm stuck here. But I think it's important that we make sure that when doing this, that we have some kind of contingency plan for inevitably many people who are going to step on the bus only have cash or not even have cash, and we still want them to be able to ride the bus and not have it completely ruin their day. And the donation box sounds like a good idea. Having some kind of system to, like, that they can get it on their phones. At least it's like buying an honor system, be like, oh, you can go pay it afterwards. And so I've seen a lot of agencies that do different things. I think we should consider something like that. And just want to know, it's like, what do we do when a teenager steps onto the bus with only cash, no phone, and no credit card or anything?
We can subsidize we can subsidize the kids.
I mean,
think we have the means.
it's kind of like what Seattle does, I think, de facto is they subsidize anybody who doesn't have the money to get on the bus. It costs more money to
Some
maintain.
kids have to go to school.
Yeah, to
In
employ
other
this.
parts, they let them drive for free. We could probably do that. We're not such a progressive community that we can start somewhere.
Yeah, that's
That was sort of my, like, what if somebody has an emergency, they had absolutely no plan to take the bus, and they just needed to jump on it to get somewhere,
Yeah. We don't want our bus drivers to feel like they need to enforce that, they need to get off the bus, you don't have the money.
So if I may
Yeah.
ask staff, what is the policy now? Is it clearly if you don't have money, you're in an emergency, you can ride? Is that policy, or do we just not allow it? Which way does it go?
Is Lance here? Lance is not here, but, so I answer for him. They ride the bus. We're not, you gotta get off. Don't do that.
Okay, so we're worried about something we're not going to change, really?
Yeah, we're gonna find a way to accommodate that change.
Because what's agendized is approval of vendor contracts, and there's angst, so I'll entertain a motion either way. Just want to delay it for information, or want to pass this and, monitor it, what do you want to do?
Well, Sarah, you're suggesting this vendor, and you're suggesting that this vendor will improve the way we do things. Is that correct?
So, the item is approval of two different contracts. One is the on-demand scheduling platform, which is with TripSpark Technologies, which is not mobile ticketing. Second is the mobile ticketing contract. We have not selected a vendor yet.
Okay.
We're still in the process of interviewing and asking questions like this with the vendor. We have not selected any.
So let's have a motion on the first thing, it's non-controversial, right? Let me make a motion to approve the first part of it.
I'll move approval of that.
second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now the second part. What are the wishes of the board?
So does cash, does cash still work even though we would move forward with this? Cash will still work currently?
Yeah.
No changes within the cash program? You can bring back to us the information regarding how much actual cash is being used for information like that. Perfect.
And I also ask that as we're looking for answers to all the questions that were previously posed, I'm interested in knowing, how does this increase or change our fare box recovery, right? Heard that there's lots of ways around if somebody doesn't have it, or, you know, the good nature of others paying, or donation box. But how does this actually impact our fare box recovery, which is the number that we have to look at? So I would like that question asked.
I didn't ask for public comment. Do you want to speak on this item? To the public? This item?
So, you know, obviously, if you, my name is Cynthia Joy. I've had to ride the bus a couple of times, and I mean, I know the inconvenience if you're in a position where you have to ride the bus. You know, obviously, if there's a place where you have to convert cash into some kind of pass, you have to get to that place. So you're obviously transportation challenged already when you need to ride the bus. So if you have to go someplace, where are those places going to be? I don't know why we're always trying to, the elephant in the room is this cashless society that's encroaching on us. And what it reminds me of is when I've seen a cat approach a bird. You know, they move stealthily and they move slowly and they freeze. And before you know it, they're inches away from the bird. The bird doesn't even perceive that it's there because it's moved so slowly. And then, of course, we know what happens to the bird. So this cashless society, I mean, I know it seems so futuristic and modern and convenient, and once people get used to using their phones and, you know, this cashless society, it seems like it's the right way to go, but it's not. I mean, I know some people here are aware of what can happen when it's just another form of enslavement and tracking your every move. So that's my public comment.
Thank you very much, Julie Threet. Yeah, you know, a couple things. We're worried about some infrastructure failure. So what happens if all of a sudden, you know, the ATM systems don't work? But also, I think if we could allow people to buy the passes and get more rides, right? So you buy $50 worth of ride for $40, and that maybe gets people that are routine to get that. If we've already got a donation bus on the box for cash, then I mean, I was thinking maybe people were getting robbed all left and right on the buses, the bus drivers. But if there's still cash on there with donations, what does it solve? So, yeah, I think if you could incentivize people to buy the pass for cheaper and get more money and discount, then they may start to get used to it and not need the cash. But yeah, we need the cash. Thanks.
Okay, now, back to the subject at hand.
One comment I'd like to add that you may already be doing this, but one of the problems I've been unaware of is some of the convalescent care homes, people wanting to go to the doctor or whatnot, it really should be riding a bus and not using a vehicle. Or I assume that you're including that in your process of purchasing some way or fashion.
Yes, part of the solutions that we're looking at would involve, or would enable a, like an attendant or a nurse at a care home to book passive rides on paratransit for those people who should not be driving. And pay for them outside of the system on the bus.
That's a population that doesn't want to use any kind of a card. In fact, I'm aware they don't even want to use a bank anymore. So,
Can't blame them.
well, I appreciate reaching out to that population. Thank you.
That would also be a population that could use emergency medical transport.
True, yeah.
Which
So we would, presumably, and this is like the parking kiosks downtown, part of the rationale is that you reduce the cost of collecting the money and processing. And also, I assume that this is going to reduce our cost in collecting fares. Do we have any numbers on like how much it does cost us to collect and process currently, how that relates to our fare box recovery? Because I'm familiar with a lot of cases that it costs more money to collect the fares and than it does, than you do get out of it anyway. So places like Olympia, because Northwest Transit Systems, they made their buses free because it's not really worth trying to collect the money from people. Like the value of public transit is like what you get out of the land value around making a place more productive because of the utility of the transit. And it's trying to lean into that. We don't have as productive transit at a lot of places. But do we have those numbers on like what is it costing us to?
We don't. We have a general idea of what goes into it and could dive into that. It'd be a little bit of a challenge. Really comes down to the number of people daily that spend X amount of time counting the cash, taking it to the bank, depositing it, developing the report that may and likely lots of times is not does not balance with what the cash box says, and then the much larger cost affiliated with it are the cash on the boxes themselves. They're about $35,000 a piece.
Initially, or
capital cost of each box. That was a few years ago, so probably a little higher than that. They have some hardwire motherboards in them that are a little archaic. Quit making them after 5 or 6 years, move on to a new model. So what happens is your fare boxes become somewhat obsolete. Yep. So you kind of get into this ongoing investment of expense for these cash boxes themselves. So I think that's really what we're trying to come up with is a solution to remove them, and go with it. Just rather than call it a cashless system, it's another option for collecting, the funding to actually operate a ticket, exchange a ticket for a ride. So these are all really good things, and what we could do is bring this back in April.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest
Answering some of these questions.
we don't need a motion on it. We'll just delay that part of it, bring it back next meeting with answers, because they're very relevant. Sorry to give you staff more work, but.
Fine.
Yeah, just one additional curiosity is what's the value of these proposals that we've gotten, for replacing it? I don't see that.
Yeah, well,
Dollar value?
Yeah, like how much are these contracts we're looking at?
Typically, when we look at proposals, we do not evaluate the cost. So we'll we're ready to work, we'll open the cost proposal. Haven't gone into that step yet. But we can certainly bring more information back in April, answering some questions, and at that time, we may have more information from some of the vendors.
It's on the order of an initial investment of software at $100,000 to $200,000. Not the value of it.
I think these are all relevant. Let's just bring it back next meeting, and for now, we'll move on to number 10. Items for information, a draft 2024, 25 overall work program, Andy.
Sure. Good morning, board. Every year, we prepare our overall work program for the BCAG side of the house. This draft program comes forward in March here, and then we bring the final back in April. The other part of the program and budgeting is with the transit, and transit service plan and budget will come in draft form in April, or by the final acceptance in May. So just a little brief overview. The OWP, the 24-25 OWP covers approximately, well, exactly 24 specific work elements. We prepare this starting at the end of the calendar year. Takes several months to do it. And what the OWP does for BCAG is it covers what we call 5 core planning functions and 10 federal planning emphasis areas. The draft budget is posted on the website, has been forwarded to Caltrans and Federal Highways. They do a review on it. That was forwarded to them at the end of February. They provide any comments to us, and then we revise them and bring a final program back to you in April. As I mentioned, there are 24 specific elements. The work elements themselves largely do not change a whole lot from year to year. They do cover what I'll call kind of 3 areas in terms of what the BCAG program does. One are what we call these 100 level elements. So bottom there, on page 1 of the item, you'll see regional transportation planning and programming work elements, 25 through 100 numbers. Those are the transportation, what we call planning elements. They occur yearly, and are funded with our existing federal and state funds specifically for those purposes to generate those types of work products. We have what we call our 200 level elements, and those are what we started bringing into the work program. And when I came to BCAG and we started doing capital projects, we introduced this 200 level document identification to identify those projects that we do as actually capital projects. So up there you'll see work elements number 215 and 216, construction of Paradise Transit Center, which we now have a start date of April 8th, so we should be out there beginning that. And also State Route 191 mitigation is a oak woodland mitigation that we did on behalf of Caltrans for some of the projects that they do. We started that back when, in 2007 and 8, construction of Highway 149, where Caltrans had environmental mitigations they were required to do. Now, their staffing wasn't really prepared to do those environmental mitigations as commitment to agencies prior to starting construction. So we established a relationship with Caltrans whereby we would go ahead and move those mitigation efforts forward and do them on their behalf because we had the mechanism in place and the people that we have for them. So those are other projects that end up in the 200 level when we're asked to do a cooperative agreement with them. They provide the funding, and we're really just their agent or their consultant to do some of those mitigation programs. The other 200 level documents that come and go would have been like when we did the Forest Highway 171 project, and then the Highway 99 in Gridley, Chico, when we built the Orville Transit Center. This facility here also was partly engaged in as a project development. We expect that we'll probably continue to do some of these projects. as we have capital needs for BCAG and particularly for transit, as we create and redo and transit stops and our routing and such. There'll be capital investments there, and then this would also be the place where any projects that we did on behalf of the jurisdictions, if they wanted us to be the agency for them, for those projects, right, as well. Then we have our 300 level elements, which are specifically related to TDA and the transit function, transit side of the house. In particular, our overall budget is right about 5.8 million. That's about 10% less than it was last year. That's on about the order of magnitude that it is on a year-to-year basis. Sometimes it does go up a little bit, sometimes it goes down a little bit, largely dependent upon those 200 level topics. Anything that we do is construction. If we think construction is going to happen in a particular year, we'll program some of those funds. Because those are tend to be pretty large amounts, that can drive the cash in and out, up and down a little bit. But for the most part, the magnitude that you see there of 5.8 is about roughly what we have all the time. Staffing for 24-25, I am proposing to go out and look for a project manager type person that can help backfill some of the things that I've been doing, and also be available as a resource to the local jurisdictions to help move maybe some funding forward, project agreements, conversations with the state and federal. Sometimes state and federal government change people so much. Locals, you guys have projects that come through the federal process, new name happens or a new process occurs, and it can be hard for you guys to keep up with those types of things. So having a project manager type person on staff with us at the regional level provides a resource not only for us to use to develop capital projects, but also to be available to the local jurisdiction. As I indicated, the draft was submitted to both Caltrans and Federal Highways. Hopefully they'll have their comments back to us and make some changes. For the most part, the way that this is a draft here, the way that this is put together now, we really tried to get it as close to the final product as possible. So over the next month before we bring it forward, there's some tweaks that will happen here and there, but for the most part, it will be very similar. We don't expect to add any work elements. And then, yeah, so final program in April. Any particular questions I can answer?
Any questions from the board?
I had two questions. So in the long report that was linked with the budget that was submitted, the first question is, it states in that report that Butte County is non-attainment for air quality for both ozone and 2.5. The reports that we've received in air quality with the exceptional events, we are in attainment. So I was curious about that. And then there's also in the budget portion of the report, there's two funding sources that are listed that I don't know if they're new funding sources or what they stand for. Not on our acronym sheet.
I'll identify those for you. Brian, I think, has the non-attainment questions.
Yeah, we've been working with Butte County Air Quality Management District on the PM 2.5, and the last I heard, we were maintenance. Like, I would want to follow up on the non-attainment status, but there's a certain maintenance period, several years, that we have to stay within, so we just don't go non-attainment to attainment. There's a maintenance period, and I believe we're currently in the maintenance period. However, they're looking at adjusting state. The federal government is actually looking at adjusting the threshold, which would seemingly put us back in non-attainment if that occurred.
We heard about that at the last air quality meeting, and they said that where they were moving to, which is that we are still in attainment with the exceptional events provision because of the wildfires that we.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, but as far as I know, we're still in maintenance. So I would check on the non-attainment status. yeah,
non-attainment.
We can do a little look into that?
Yeah.
Your second question, I'm assuming is referring to the two funding sources identified as TIRSIP and ZETSIP. Okay. The TIRSIP program is called the Transit Intercity Rail and Capital Improvement Program. And the ZETSIP is called the Zero Emissions Transit Capital Program. So those are our two funding sources that were identified in a result of basically cap and trade. Now, many of you may have been here a couple of months ago when I talked a little bit about cap and trade program, a couple of funds identified, and how the North Valley Rail project is going to be utilizing a portion of those funds, as well as the development and pursuit of hydrogen fueling for our zero emissions. Both of those programs, and it's a substantial sum of money for our region. The TIRSIP program is roughly a little over 20 million. The ZETSIP program is a little over 3. They do have specific purposes, as their names are pretty good to identify what those funding sources are for. Our initial effort was going to be, and we did submit an allocation. It really is just an allocation. It's not competitive. Our region gets what it gets over 3 fiscal years, was to utilize a good portion of the TIRSIP program to help move the North Valley Rail project forward. The ZETSIP program we were going to utilize to develop our initial steps towards a hydrogen fueling storage, really on site. We won't be reforming it. We would just, mobile fueling would come in, and then we would mobile fuel with hydrogen for zero emissions on site. The goal being there is that we have electric buses coming. I don't have a very good confidence level on the electric buses. I think the zero emission hydrogen will be better. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve. At any rate, both of those programs are tied up in the deficit. They are on hold. Haven't said that the funds are not going to be available. Just that likely toward the beginning or into 26, possibly 27, 25, 26, 26, 27. Haven't really said too much about it, other than that they're kind of on hold while they work out the state budget. I put them in there as the to be determined. I'm not 100% sure if they're actually going to say you can have access to those funds in the latter portion of the 20. So if it's confusing, I'll just remove them, and when they do come out, I can bring them in.
And they didn't have any dollar amounts associated with them.
They're substantial, so if we did include them and they were available and we were going to move forward with those things, it would move the budget by $5 to $15 million.
Something related to that, I had heard that the REAP fund allocations that we got last year were in question because of the state's budget. Is that reflected here, or are these guaranteed funds?
These are, well, you're going to get them. They've said you're going to get them. So that's all I can really say is there hasn't been any move for them to say we're removing them. But I do believe they are being utilized to balance the budget.
I can jump in, Andy.
But Chris can work on
Some of the funding in the budget is from REAP 1.0, which was a different sort of pot of funds, really. And then REAP 2.0, the state budget proposal does include removing some of those funds. There's coordination going on. These try to ensure that doesn't happen. So we're sort of in a wait and see for half of that funding.
So that's not within the 1.125 million here.
Any other questions by the board?
And this is just super minor, but the personnel that you have listed for Paradise probably needs to be upgraded.
in the,
Down at the very bottom of the.
Any other questions or comments? Any public comment on this? All right, we'll move on to number 11, the 2024 Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy. Yvonne.
Good morning, Board. BCAG is required to adopt a regional transportation plan, sustainable community strategy with an environmental impact report every 4 years. This next 2024 RTP-SES is scheduled to be adopted by the Board at the December Board meeting. In essence, the RTP-SES is BCAG's general plan for transportation, covers a 20-year minimum horizon. This next one will have a base year of 2024 and go out to 2045. It really serves as the foundation for BCAG's program. On the federal side, we have the Federal Transportation Improvement Program. On the state side, we have the Regional Transportation Improvement Program for our state transportation improvement program projects. As a side note, the commission did approve BCAG's RTIP and STIP, so $6.3 million roundabout and Orville's counties, Palermo Safe Routes to School. The 2024 RTP-SES contains the document itself having a policy element, sustainable community strategy that Chris will give the board an update on the next agenda item. An action element, which contains all of the projects in the RTP over the next 20 years. And a financial element, having all the financial projections that support those projects. Also included is the air quality conformity analysis and determination, with clarification on our non-attainment status. In addition, an environmental impact report, making sure the RTP is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act requirements. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board an update to inform you all that BCAG has worked with the Transportation Advisory Committee, made up of your public works directors, to compile a specific project list. In the agenda item, those agencies are hyperlinked. Ashley, if you could hyperlink Chico, for example, specific list of projects are in there. There is a current total of 247 projects for each of the member jurisdictions, including BCAG, Butte Regional Transit, and Caltrans District 3 projects. This list will remain draft until it's adopted by the BCAG board, and like all things we do, once it's adopted, the board can amend it at any time. BCAG has held or participated in various public outreach events, community or cultural events. We've done that. We will continue all the way through, and I think Victoria will be providing, or Amy will be providing, closing the board meeting with an update of those public outreach events. I think we get better community meaningful engagement when BCAG goes and participates in other events. So this is just an update. We have that project list. The RTP development is moving forward. This is a key component getting into this next agenda item with the SES update. Happy to questions.
I'd like to thank Mayor Orville and the City Council of Orville for participating. It's not so in the past, and therefore Orville didn't receive any funding. So thank you very much for that. And there is a project in Orville. We really need sidewalks on Lincoln from the city limits out to the county. The county completed it. Orville annexed South Orville, and so it's a very dangerous, very busy 4-lane road. Is it included? All right.
If this is the same project we brought up
Yeah.
at the last board meeting?
Yeah.
Thanks. I agree. I was just to comment that the other Orville project, the Washington Street, talked with our public works director just before the meeting today, and they've had a workshop and 2 other public reach events, and have received over 80% positive response to the idea and the concept of it. So that was through a survey and through actual workshop and public comment period. So it's a good go for that particular project. Appreciate
agenda item on the FTIP amendment gives us the seed money to get these projects going and put Orville in a strong position to go after other state and federal funding opportunities.
Well, and the neighborhoods like it, so that's a positive. In this day and age, that's a rare thing sometimes.
One of the things I noticed, excuse me, when I was looking for projects that I thought were with specific cities, was that they're listed under Butte County. So, we have listed out all of the cities, and then we have Butte County, and we have BCAG, and so when I was looking for things, I'm thinking, I thought that this was moving forward, that things that I was looking for, I found listed under the county, specifically under Orville or Chico.
Projects listed in here are those that may be programmed through BCAG, or they could be other types of projects on which we as a regional agency want to capture those benefits. For the bike improvements are those projects that improve our quality, that could work towards our regional performance measures and our air quality goals. So it's not all inclusive. I'm sure there's a bunch of projects that take out of the BCAG.
Really quick on your grid of projects, some of them are marked planned, some of them are marked programmed. What is the difference with?
Program would be they are specifically included in the Federal Transportation Improvement Program. The RTPs are long-range plan that serves as a foundation for the FTIP, which is a short-range programming document that's federally funded. It has to be identified there. Or on the state side, the Regional Transportation Improvement. Their program funding is committed. If it's planned, it would fall within BCAG's financial projections as being reasonably anticipated funding. Not far-fetched or not a wish list. If it's something grandiose, that's a big regional need that we can't identify funding, would be unconstrained.
Thank you for all the projects in Paradise. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Any public comment on it? We'll move on. Thank you. Number 12, Sustainable Community Strategy. Chris?
Yeah, good morning, thank you. We just want to give you an update. I'll let you know that the SCS is continuing to move forward. Yvonne kind of introduced that a bit, I guess. We do have joining us today on Zoom, members of our consulting team at PlaceWorks who are assisting us with the SCS update, and also Fear and Peers who are assisting us with some of the technical modeling work. And so we're mainly here just to kind of listen in and answer any questions. So, yeah, kind of like Yvonne said, the 2024 update of the RTP SCS is still on track for approval at the December BCAG Board of Directors meeting. We've included an updated project schedule on attachment 1, and essentially we're expecting a draft RTP SCS to be out at the end of summer, early fall. We're going to be doing about a 60-day public review for that in concert with the CEQA document, the EIR. We'll do all that together. We're doing some additional public workshops, some pop-up events, whatnot. So, and then currently we're developing these 4 land use and transportation scenarios, which is kind of the focus of this item today. Something we do every time we update the SCS. The goal with these scenarios is to arrive at a scenario that helps us meet the 7% per capita GHG reduction target that's been established for our region by CARB. So the 4 scenarios, they're somewhat similar to what we did in 2020 and 2016, generally. Kind of reflective of what other MPOs do as well. And, just want to point out this is primarily a modeling exercise. Brian's our kind of in-house expert. He works with staff at Fear and Peers to run each scenario through the travel demand model, get outputs. You have to run it through the emissions model to try to determine, what the GHG reduction is of each scenario. So Brian's going to kind of walk through the 4 different scenarios. We've included attachment 2, which has some detail. Brian's going to walk through these, and then just wanted to also say, hopefully next month, but it may be at the May board meeting, we're going to be bringing a preferred scenario back to you, and we should have even more detail on each of these 4 scenarios at that time. The 4th one, we're still trying to kind of turn it over to Brian. He's going to go over those 4 scenarios.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Just to correct Chris on one thing, briefly, you said that we did scenarios in 2016 and 2020. We did not. We actually did in 2012 initially. Our first SES, we looked at 3 or 4 different scenarios, and ever since then, we've just kind of been rolling preferred scenario over and making adjustments as we go. This time around, we actually decided to go back, and since things have changed a lot since 2018 in the region, it's kind of, we've developed 4 different scenarios so we can get kind of what's been occurring or what changes have made in terms of transportation, and what some of the new plans that we have coming online due to these scenarios. So I guess I'll direct you to attachment 2, the multicolored table there, which kind of goes over the scenarios. So scenario 1's pretty easy. It's really what would be our no project. It's a direct rollover of the 2020 RTPS, SES. We really use this as kind of a baseline to compare the future, the other plans to in the right direction. Scenario 2 is very similar to scenario 1 with the exception of we actually update our regional growth forecasts. Include updated regional growth forecast, which we brought to you, I believe, late last year, which overall have less growth prior, kind of handed down to us from. We're looking at some less population growth, as well as we implement the B-line routing study, which I believe was last year, Sarah's team. So that gives us the new transportation network. Scenario 3 is kind of the latest trends occurring in the region. So we go ahead and we incorporate some increased growth in the urban center and established areas. So that would be growth in agricultural rural areas, as well as an increase in multifamily housing. So greater percentage of multifamily housing helped improve jobs, housing balance, and as well as incorporating new housing elements that have been by the jurisdictions. This includes the updated project list that I just went over, so updated transportation projects. So that would be scenario 3. And scenario 4 is really, once we run the first 3 scenarios, if we identify additional areas that we see need to be addressed, do these off-model calculations, and include these off-model strategies. So what we're looking at now is telecommuting. So that's essentially doubled since 2018. Effects of that, as well as telemedicine. So that's something new we're looking at, called BMT, or single occupant vehicle reducers, travel reducers, as well as the increased transit frequency. So we can toggle this. Hey, do we want transit? And any other areas we see that may need to be addressed. We hope to wrap up modeling these 4 scenarios here shortly. And bring these back to the recommendation on.
Any questions or comments?
One question, can you tell me what on the SCS strategy schedule, what do the letters top mean? I couldn't find a key. Oh, the slide before this one. There you go.
So those are, represent the first letter of each month.
They just change every year, since we don't do it on a quarterly or something.
Sorry, is it off or? I can't quite see it from here.
23, it says J, which could be January, but it ends with J. And it says A, so maybe it goes from January to August. So
July, August.
July, August.
That should just be the month. Be correct.
We're not using a different calendar.
No, I'm not. I'm using the calendar.
Gregorian.
Gregorian, right?
You're 57,
Thought about the Mayan calendar, but
78.
The Russian calendar. Okay, any other questions or comments by the board? Any public comment on this matter? Thank you, we'll move on. Butte Regional Transit, Paratransit Program overview. Sarah?
As a follow-up to the discussion that we had at last month's board meeting, we're providing an overview of the Beeline Paratransit service. Public transit operators are required by ADA law to provide paratransit service to people with disabilities who cannot use the fixed route service due to a disability within 3/4 of a mile of the fixed route. Beeline Paratransit includes this requirement with 3 supplemental zones for up to 3 miles served outside of the core service area and serves individuals 70 and older. Beeline Paratransit is a door-to-door shared ride service where our drivers will come to the door or other designated pickup location and drop off in front of or as close as possible to the designated drop-off location. For safety reasons, our drivers are instructed to stay within the line of sight of their vehicle at all times. If additional assistance is needed for our customers to get in the lobby, we ask that a personal care attendant joins them on the ride. Beeline services are evaluated and reviewed on an ongoing basis as part of various planning studies, coordination with the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council and Transit Administrative Oversight Committee. As Amy will detail, we have a number of public outreach events, onboard surveys, and comment forms. At the last board meeting, staff contacted Passages to learn more about the Medical Chaperone Program and the AmeriCorps Volunteer Driver Programs. We had a great conversation with their staff. There are several factors that distinguish these programs from Beeline Paratransit. The Passages transportation programs are volunteer driver-based. The Medical Chaperone Program connects clients with volunteers that are available to grocery shop, wait at and attend doctor's appointments, and help with prep and follow-up for medical appointments. The Passages programs also provide inter-city and inter-county trips. As staff considers implementation of a similar service through non-emergency medical transportation, coordination with other nonprofit providers such as Passages will be integral to the success of an NEMT program as an additional option for this type of service and need. Staff will continue to keep the board updated on the process of implementation for NEMT. Just presented for information, but I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments by the board? Thank you for the update. Any public comment? Thank you. Moving on, Butte Regional Transit Outreach and Community Involvement. Amy.
How are you, Board? I'm over here today. Thank you. In light of our conversation last month about agency outreach and possibly attending Arbor Day in Oroville, and also with Sarah's and Yvonne's information today, I'm happy to share our planned outreach activities for the remainder of 2024. We're looking forward to using these opportunities throughout the county this year. We've added a few more opportunities in Paradise. And then we also feel, by sharing this information and connecting with the communities throughout the county, Beeline and BCAG engage with those we serve, and hopefully new riders and out there to connect with everybody as much as we can. So I'm ready to touch on these different areas of the county, and hopefully that will see some of you there and encourage other people in your jurisdictions to come and talk to us and get comments and questions, out stickers, trying to create a positive.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment. I did get a chance to see the booth at the Arbor Day festival, and I never knew Arbor Day would be such a big event in Oroville, but we have over 60 booths that actually set up in the, and your Beeline booth was one of the better ones, well organized, great contact, and I heard a lot of positive comments about it. So, attaboy to staff. It was really good. I think there was a lot of contact there.
Yeah, I was part too. It was a good experience. I'm looking forward to next year.
Thank you.
Also, I think Butte Fire Safe Council is going to do their Goat Grazing Festival again, if you get the dates of that.
Yeah, that's a big event.
Yesterday, there was a large conference over at Enloe, that was a combination with, the Brain Coalition and the Traumatic Brain Injury, and, the vast majority of the people in the room, were not drive, themselves, and so I think it's a good idea for us to be connect with passages and public health. I did a long hour on bicycle safety, and utilize how to use a bus.
We are a little bit limited on staff.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to something every Saturday in May, so I'm giving up most of my month. But I am happy to do that. It's actually one of the joys of my job, so we'll continue to add things in.
I was gonna ask, are you open to suggestions? And it sounds like kind of.
Yes.
Not in May, maybe. Yeah, I know students at Chico State are a captive customer base, but I think some Chico State, they have like when they show up in the semester, that'd be a really good time to educate people on how useful the bus can be for them, considering they do have free access.
Yes, and we actually are gonna bring a bus down there in the fall. We do a bus day there.
On the First Street.
No, on campus, actually, like DJ.
Yeah, First Street runs through campus,
Yeah,
pretty close down.
yeah, right.
Awesome.
Any other? Oh, hope you get comp time off or something.
We work it out.
Any other questions? All right, next up is items from the floor. We'll take public comment. We can't take any action on your comment, but you're more than welcome. Any public comment? Come on up. Morning.
Morning. Which one do I use? This one, I guess. Okay. My question,
Could I have your name if you?
my name is John Hoflick. Okay. My question is, when is the BCAG going to have the public hearing for your rail plan, your passenger rail plan? When will the public hearing be held?
That's a great question. We're way into the planning, but go ahead and answer that.
I've been waiting 2 years for this.
Sure. We'd hope to bring the final strategic plan to the board at this meeting, but it took a bit longer. We let folks know it's going to be at the April meeting. So it won't be a formal public hearing at the meeting, but there'll definitely be the opportunity for public comment as it's an item coming to the board, so.
Well, most of the transportation planning agencies that I've been involved with, which are several in the North State, have formal public hearings where it's addressed to the BCAG board, in your case, and other boards. When you have a plan, you address it to the board. So I would like to see if you'd please have a formal public hearing regarding this plan. And also, I'll get out of here real quick, but when I came down here from Reading, I was kind of shocked when I checked with the B line to see how to get here. And I was informed it was a 2-mile walk from the nearest bus stop. And that's, for me and for most transit-dependent people, not necessarily elderly or disabled, even if you're young or whatever, a 4-mile round trip is quite a difficult endeavor to try to get to your meetings. That's all I have to comment about. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
When will we have a formal? We're still so far into planning.
Yeah, I mean, for items that are required of BCAG as an agency, like the RTP, the RTIP, we always do formal public hearings, but because this is a grant-funded planning document, we typically don't. I would say if it's the board's direction to have that public, or a formal hearing, we could certainly do that.
I don't think it harms anything. If
No.
it's not extra work for the staff, we'll just make it formal.
Sure, we can totally do that.
Meeting, and
We're not a lead
there's your answer,
agency.
sir. Great public comment.
Yeah, we're not
Next
the lead agency, which would typically necessitate a formal public hearing per se, but we're certainly open to having.
Who is considered the lead agency on this?
The San Joaquin Joint Rail Commission and Joint Powers Agency.
The reason I ask that is because Supervisor Teeter and I were just back in Washington, D.C., a quick trip to the Department of Transportation. And I know that we had requested funding for studies on this program. And last year, I know we were not up to the final, and we were not granted that. And they said that the San Joaquin Authority has applied for these. I think they're called RAISE funds again. Is that correct?
Yeah, San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority applied again this round, and I believe Town of Paradise has a grant in the BASE program this round as well for the road project. So, yeah, BCAG did not submit this go around.
Okay, but we are included, the northern part of that, the rail is included in that study that was put together by San Joaquin, is that correct?
Well, I mean, their raised grant application was for a specific project on the Valley Rail system, Valley Rail program in the San Joaquin Valley.
So our project is not seeking any raise funding.
But a year ago, we were.
Correct.
And why did we not do that this time?
Two reasons. One, SJJPA was submitting their application, and Town of Paradise was submitting their application, and the way that the funds tend to get distributed geographically, it was, we would have been competing with the Town of Paradise directly. And they actually held off last year on applying so that we could apply. And we also decided to support SJJPA's application to help them further along Valley Rail program, which directly feeds in the North Valley Rail.
That by not applying for this is not going to slow down our project.
No, and actually, as Andy was explaining, those TIRSIP funds are a perfect fit for developing the next phases of the project. The only problem is that those are now delayed to 25, 26. Recently.
Thank you very much.
There was still public comment. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
I was gonna be here as an alternate, and I was gonna share something. Now I'm sitting on here. I didn't expect that Vice Mayor Reynolds would be present. Do you mind if I give a little, with some things?
We can't take action.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to remind you of your brown apple.
That's good, yeah, right. So, back in January, the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority had a meeting. They were discussing turning over operation of the thruway bus that reaches the San Joaquin Rail in Stockton to Reading Transit Authority. So that would allow Reading and Red Bluff to purchase bus-only tickets to Sacramento. Currently, if you're not aware, because these are thruway buses to the train, there's like historic rule that you have to have a train ticket. So in order to get to Sacramento from Chico on the Amtrak bus, which leaves at reasonable hours, it's like 7:55 and 3:30, you have to buy a rail connection. So for me to get to Sacramento, what I do is I buy a ticket to Davis and I ditch the train. So I went to the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting. I bought a ticket to Davis and I ditched the train, and I walked to the Sacramento County Association of Governments building and went to it to like request of them that because they're turning over, they're allowing Reading and Red Bluff to buy bus-only tickets, just allow Chico, Oroville, and Marysville to buy bus-only tickets because it's really important access to Sacramento. People aren't aware that it exists. You pay an extra fee to get the ticket to Davis, and you can ditch it, nobody says anything. It's not illegal to my knowledge to not take the train, but it does, it convolutes things, and it's existing public resources that are not being put to use. So there was a bill in 2019, SB 742, that allowed these agencies that operate the Amtrak train to allow for bus-only service. There are some stipulations of how it works to get there. They first have to get verification that no public agency will operate that route in lieu of them. And so that's what Reading is doing. They're operating the route. We had discussed that. Chris Devine and I've talked a few times about it. He's present in those meetings remotely, and BCAG decided to not operate Stockton. They want us to take the whole Route 3 of the thruway bus to Stockton, which I think is sort of ridiculous. We're crossing multiple counties, and they want us to operate it. So the second stipulation is that what the law says that you have a good faith effort to coordinate with the private bus providers to see if they will provide those routes so they arrive on time to catch the train. I'll note that currently, because this is the San Joaquin Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, and they operate the San Joaquin Rail, not the Capital Corridor that goes to Davis and the Bay Area. It does not coordinate with the most common transfer, which is the Capital Corridor. You wait an hour in order to get onto that train. But so we need to have a good faith effort to coordinate with Greyhound / FlixBus, the only private bus provider here. And then if those are met, there has to be a written declaration by the public agency that they will not take up the route. Then the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority can allow us the treat of being able to buy bus only tickets to Sacramento, which is, I think, something that we should pursue. And so I mentioned this just to say that I've been kind of doing some lobbying on this, trying to get them to do it. But I also want to say, because this segues into what we were just talking about, the funding and the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, it became really painfully, I became painfully aware that the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority has a lot of influence in our region. They're the lead agency planning the rail that is going to here in Chico. That is going to be all of our access to the rest of the state rail network. But we don't have a seat on the board. It's created for the San Joaquin rail service to be taken. And so there are board members from Contra Costa and Alameda counties on the board, but not anywhere north. They also operate the thruway services because of the way that that's kind of like a core backbone of the state. These thruway buses that they operate go all over Southern California, go to Las Vegas, go to Arcata. That one was just turned over. Route 3, that's ours, is the most frequently taken. There's more ridership on Route 3 than there is in others. Route 1 is broken up into 3 different ones. So I think there's a lot of, there would be more demand, there'd be more usage if we allowed the bus only tickets to more convenient destinations. But it's not there, and I see that as a broader issue that we should be taking up. We see that they're applying for funding for rail that serves other areas but are leaving out the rail that comes up here. And I think it's kind of a broader thing that we as North State public officials should take up, that we ought to have representation. Low-key imperialist, that they're in control of this. They can ship off the work to BCAG, so we're going to do the study on the rail and implementation plan and all, but we don't actually have say in, do we pursue funding for this, how do we prioritize this, and how is it going to be run ultimately. We're seeing the effects of that with them not seeing it as an urgent or important thing to make sure that we get bus-only service. It's on us to try to figure out purchasing buses with bathrooms on it, which we just don't have the capital resources for, hiring drivers to go all the way to Stockton when we really want to get to Sacramento Bay Area more than anything else. So I thought I would share that with you. Thank you. I think that would be worthwhile to involve the people on the board here. I know staff has been looking at this. It's they're aware of all this, and I just most recently heard last week from Chris that BCAG does not consider ourselves capable of managing that service, which means that we need to have the written pronouncement of that, and we need to have the good faith effort to coordinate Greyhound to see if they will take over that route. Otherwise, my understanding then is that the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority could allow us, if they would be so kind, to purchase bus-only tickets to Sacramento. I am kind of convinced, based on my going to the meeting, it seemed like there was sympathy with the officials on the board, but they're told by planning staff that it's more complicated. We must coordinate, and the state is more restrictive in this. There really are little hurdles to jump that you just have to have the wherewithal to jump the hurdles. But I think that we could get it there. Yeah, and I also mentioned as far as this SJJPA not including us, the majority of board members were there remotely by Zoom. 3 of them were present in the room. So we absolutely could have representation on the board just as conveniently as they do.
So we can't do anything but ask to agendize a couple items there. One is the bus issue, the other is the board. Will you agendize that so we can have a full and frank discussion and give us a report so we can give direction or not? All right. There you go. Any other comment by board members?
I have a quick one.
I'm going to close public comment. Close the public comment. Go ahead.
Yeah. We've had a big issue about traffic enforcement. In fact, we have a number of neighborhoods with petitions asking for traffic slowing improvements like speed bumps and traffic signs and so on and so forth.
Didn't we just do that?
Yeah. I'm curious if any of the cities had an experience with these new radar signs, and if there was any success with those, because we're looking at those really strongly. There's a new radar sign that actually tracks the data and the speeding and the time the speeders speed the area, which gives law enforcement the ability to park there when the highest level of speeder is occurring to write tickets. Just curious what any cities have had success with those radar signs.
Well, we'll have them give you a call, because it's not agendized, and I don't wanna, county doesn't have one of that.
Up
Right.
to, I think they just went through some type of a study.
Okay,
And
appreciate
you may
that.
have some information.
We don't have one, right? No. Okay, class dismissed. Talk about it. You're gonna get me in trouble here.
Remember, we're gonna buy one.
Yeah, I suggest we buy one. Yeah, we put up 4 stop signs, we've got positive results.